Hello, everyone. This is Debra Richardson, and today I am putting the AP in Happy, where accounts payable teams are empowered to protect the vendor master file from fraud. This podcast will give a voice to accounts payable team members by talking about the growing reality of cyber attacks in their world and which vendor setup and vendor management techniques they can apply to protect the vendor master file from fraud. Need training? Visit the Vendor Process Training Center to enroll in your choice of weekly live and on demand training sessions. Plus, get access to vendor setup form templates and reference tools that will help you and your team avoid fraud, fines, and bad vendor data. So, sign up for a free account to get access to free training sessions, vendor process FAQs, and a resource library with information you need to manage your vendor master file. Visit training.debrarrichardson.com today. The link will be in the show notes. When will the IRS contact you? How will they contact you? Is it really them? So, to hear how and when the IRS will reach out and how you can tell if you are communicating with a fraudster, keep listening. Welcome to episode 362, 6 Ways the IRS Can Reach Out to You and How to Tell It's Not a Fraudster. So it is no secret that the fraudsters will reach out to businesses, to individuals, pretend to be the IRS. They'll ask for gift cards. They'll ask for, oh no, they'll say you're going to jail and all this other kind of strange things that not everybody knows the IRS does not do. And so I've been, what is this, podcast number 362? It's been since 2018, so 7 years. Let me see what else I can say. It's just been a long time that I am surprised that I've never talked about how the IRS will reach out to you and what different methods they will use and really when they will do it and when they won't. So then you can like invert that and say, well, this is when the IRS won't reach out to me. But I'll also, provide some examples of how to tell it's absolutely a fraudster. So the first thing I'm going to do is go over the 6 different ways the IRS can contact you. And then I'll talk about the ways that you can just absolutely know that it is a fraudster. And then I will share a link with you, talk about an infographic, one pager that you can download, and hopefully you can give that to everybody that receives any inquiries from vendors or regulatory agencies. And have them also be able to identify when it's the real IRS and when it's a fraudster. All right, so now I forgot what order I said I was going to do everything in, but we're going to start with the 6 different ways, I think that was right, that the IRS will reach out to you. Now, the question is why the heck would the IRS reach out, right? And for the AP and the vendor team, it's probably related to 1099 reporting in some type of way, 1099 or 1042 tax returns that you have submitted to the IRS to report payments for vendors for, each tax year. Because typically, filing those returns, also sending the recipient statements to the vendors are those things that are done in the accounts payable team or in the vendor team. And so who gets those questions? Accounts payable team and the vendor team. So what kind of things may they reach out to you for? Well, it could be, right, that when the returns were submitted to the IRS, the legal name and tax ID on, hopefully not too many of your vendors were incorrect. They did not match IRS records. And so you either received a CP 2100 or 2100A. If it's less than, you filed less than 50 information returns with errors. More than that, you get the CP 2100. So maybe they're reaching out for that. Maybe there were, there's a fine or penalty because maybe you filed them late. And so you get the notice 972G, or, hopefully not, but maybe there's an audit, or maybe there's other 1099 or 1042 issues. And so let's talk about the ways that the IRS, the contact method ways that they have to not respond, but to reach out to you. Oh, I guess so, respond to you as well. All right. So the first one is letter. Now, typically, the IRS will reach out the first time by mail sending a notice. Now, what they say is to make sure, right, that it is them, is to take that notice that you received, whatever it is, and click on the IRS notices and letters to verify that it is them. And most of you, if you are filing, there is filing returns with the IRS. Someone has to have an account to do that with, an ID Me account. Well, you could go in that ID Me account and you can get the electronic notice of that letter, and then that way you compare them both and verify that it is actually the IRS. But they also have another link where you can search the IRS notices and letters to verify that it is a valid letter that they would notice, or letter that they would send out. And I'm just going to click on this real quick because I have the link, and it goes to a page that says understanding your IRS notice or letter. And they talk about that. And then they also talk about scams and consumer alerts because right, that could be an issue. And they know it can be an issue. It even gives you the phone number if that letter, if you suspect that it's a scam. But then also, they will give you a link to your online account to do what I talked about before, and that is to have whoever does the returns, again, they have to have an account in order to do that, to go on that account and look for that same notice or letter, again, just to verify that it is valid and came from the IRS. So the most important takeaway on this first of 6 methods that the IRS will use to contact you is that they will typically reach out the first time by mail by sending a notice or a letter. Now, the second communication method is phone. And believe it or not, it is very rare that the IRS will reach out via phone to address account matters. Now, I will tell you, when I was a practitioner, and you guys probably heard this already, but I had was over 140,000 active vendors, and we had, of those, we probably sent out anywhere between 24,000 and 30,000 1099s and 1042s per year. And so I remember, though, with that many, we always had some issue with at least some of them. And I do remember getting phone calls from the IRS. I remember this one time, and it probably was more than the one time, but I remember, right, one time where they left a voicemail. But today it is very rare that the IRS will reach out via phone to address any account matter at all. As a matter of fact, if you call them and you both figure out that more information needs to be researched on your issue, the IRS, even if they're the ones that have to do the research, will give you a reference number or a time frame for you to call back. or you can, or they will ask you to fax or mail some documentation. So if you get a phone call and they say they're from the IRS, that is more than likely a fraudster. All right, so that was two. The third one is by email. Now, we all know how risky email is, don't need to go into that. But the IRS's stance on communicating via email is they will only reach out via email with your permission. So if you get an unexpected email from the IRS, guess what? It is probably from a fraudster. All right, so that's number three. Number four is fax. Now, this is typical. IRS may send a fax to verify or request employment information. Now, this is probably not something that we're going to get in AP or the vendor team. This is probably going to go to payroll. And let me just tell you though, payroll, I love you guys. I loved getting my checks for as long as I was in, right, corporate America. That was always great. But let me just say that if you sent some of your files to the IRS with the address where you were located, because some companies I was with, it was very big. And so where we were located is not the same address as where payroll was located. And so if they had the last communication to the IRS, then any notification that we needed or I needed in the vendor team or AP team, it always went to the last address on file, which sometimes was the payroll department. So I would be calling them to see if they had, my CP 2100 letters or notices. They would call me to see if I had some of their notices from the IRS. And so I don't know why that has to be a thing with the IRS. And if they change that, I haven't heard about it, but hopefully they have, but I don't think so. So you guys, maybe some of you, if you have your, let's say, payroll team or payroll department or group in another location than the AP or the vendor team that's sending out the documents, the recipient statements to the vendors and the returns to the IRS, and then getting those notifications, you probably are playing like the tag on who has the notifications from the IRS, depending on who filed latest, AP or the vendor team or payroll. But anyway, fax, right? The IRS may send it to verify or request employment information. Just talked before about how if you're on the phone with an IRS agent, let's say if you called and then more research or more information is needed, they may have you fax information to them. So fax can be used in a couple of different scenarios. All right, so that was number four. Two more. One is in-person visits. Now, I am very happy that they reduced these in-person visits. Not only is, I just don't think it's safe. I know they're going to some businesses, but, you never know what the business's hours are, or, if they're working hybrid or 100% work from home, or it could just still be dangerous anyway as an IRS agent. But so they have reduced a lot of the in-person visits. And so they consider this rare that you will get an unannounced in-person visit. And if you do, then you will generally have received a letter from the IRS first. All right. And then the last one, I probably should have paired this one with the email, but it is that, inevitable text message. Unless it's a friend like that I know and that I have in my contact list, because otherwise it'll go to spam. If I received a text message, because sometimes I have them going to spam if they're not in my contact list. But sometimes when I get a notification before I get over to the spam or before I get over to the text message, it'll show me that spam text message in like my notification. So it'll give like a pre-header of it. And uh, anything that I get right, from anyone that's not a contact, I just automatically assume that it is a scam, that it's spam, that it's whatever. And so the same thing with the IRS, they tell you that only with your permission will the IRS reach out via text message. Now, I can't imagine in a professional or business situation why there would be a need to have a text message go or come from the IRS or give them permission to do that. But if you do, that is the only way that you're going to get an text message from the IRS. So if you get a random out of the blue text message from the IRS, it is probably a fraudster. All right. So here then, of these six contact methods, uh, letter in the mail, telephone, uh, email, fax number, in-person visit, text message. The only one that may probably will be or might be legitimate is that first time letter that's coming or that letter that's coming via USPS snail mail. That's the one that more than likely, if anything else, more than anything else, I'll say, may be legitimate, but you still have to check that too. Everything else is either rare or with your permission. So if you're talking on the phone with the IRS about anything, and I do want to say that because they will talk to you on the phone, but you have to make sure you initiate that conversation. And then if you need to talk to them again, excuse that notification, but if you need to talk to them again and they know it and you know it, guess what? You're still going to be initiating that conversation because they're probably going to give you a reference number and have you call them back. So those are the six contact methods. Now, one thing I do want to say is that tax professionals that have that where they are talking with the IRS and probably when you call them too. And you know what? You're a tax professional. So, when you contact the IRS is not going to just start talking to you about whatever you call to talk about. They will actually authenticate you. Right. They'll make sure they'll ask you one to two, or I won't say one to two. That's what I tell you to ask folks when you're authenticating them. But they'll ask you some identifying questions, just like the bank does, right? To make sure that you are who you say you are. Not only that, too, but the IRS will verify that you are able to speak on behalf of the company. I forgot the question that they ask you, but they'll ask you if you're like a representative or a principal, not a principal, but they'll ask you if you have authorization to speak on behalf of the company, some kind of language that says to verify that you are able to speak to, they are able to speak to you about what you call to speak about. So I say that because you know what? You can authenticate the IRS. So if you get that phone call or that email with permission or that SMS text, right? That text message with permission. You can authenticate that they are who they say they are. If you get that rare in-person uh, visit, you can authenticate them to verify they are who they say they are. If you get that rare telephone call from the IRS, you will be able to, you should authenticate or you can authenticate them via phone as well. And so I do have a one pager, it's a PDF that's, what's the name of it? Oh, I call it the IRS authentication checklist. And on that checklist, I identify of these different contact methods that you can have with the IRS or that they can use to reach out to you, how to authenticate them or how to tell that it really is them. And so this authentication or IRS authentication checklist is a free download, and I am going to put a link to it in the show notes. And not only that, But I also have on that, again, it's a one pager. I also have on there the phone numbers that you can call in order to confirm or just reach out to the IRS if you have questions. And so you want to make sure that not only you get that information, but you pass it around to your internal team members that may get inquiries or may somehow, I don't know, run into the in-person visit, from the quote unquote IRS agent. So I have things on here like, authenticating the caller, what you can ask for, where you can go to verify the information that they gave you when you asked for it, like their full name, their badge number, that type of thing. And so again, I will put, it's a free download and I'll put that in the show notes so you can download it and then share it with everyone that, again, on your team or in your company that may receive this communication from the IRS either via letter, email, or text message, in-person visit, or phone call. All right. So while we were going through all of those, I know I talked about, the converse, this is how you can tell it's a fraudster because, the IRS will never do this. But I do have just some scenarios where you can definitely tell that it is a fraudster. And so, on the phone, here are three ways you can definitely tell it's a fraudster. If they call you with threats of lawsuits or arrests, if they call, email, or text to request taxpayer identity protection pins, or if they call with an automated message that threatens or directs you to websites that aren't irs.gov. Yeah, these next two, so threaten is a big one. That's what I was going to say. And then the next two is like for police officers or threatening to have police officer type events. And one is to threaten to call law enforcement or immigration officials. And then two, to threaten to take your citizenship status, driver's license, or business license. Yeah, that's not going to happen. Can I just say, and I will preface this by saying I think they meant well, but when I took over the vendor setup and maintenance process at my last corporate position, I think it was written in the desktop procedures, SOPs, whatever you want to call them, right? About collecting the W-9. But it could have just been something that was said. And if it was said, it was said a lot. But we were told that if we accepted a W-9 that was not the current W-9, that we could go to jail. Okay, so moving on. The last one, where the last section is uh, around money. And again, this is how you can tell it's a fraudster. And so I've got 4 bullet points here. One is that they initiate contact with you by email, text, or social media to request personal or financial information. You get a direct message or they ask for payment on social media. So, you get that DM or messenger on Facebook or whatever you call it. They asking for payment, and that should automatically be a scam because why are they reaching out on Facebook? Although I do recognize some of you guys can be small businesses, so maybe they would reach out on Facebook because that's where a lot of your clients are. Uh, and then the and then the next one is accepting gift cards or prepayment cards as payment. So if they tell you that they will accept either of those as payment, yeah, the IRS does not accept gift cards or prepaid debit cards, I should say, as payment. And then the last one is you will get in the mail some tax debt resolution advertisements. Yeah, those are not from the IRS. So I hope this information will help you as we move into year end and really any time of the year because we know fraudsters never stop. So thanks everyone. I hope you enjoyed the 362nd episode of the Putting the AP in Happy podcast, where accounts payable teams are empowered to protect the vendor master file from fraud. Don't forget to check the show notes for the links mentioned in the podcast. And if you enjoyed this episode, consider subscribing and writing a review of my podcast on the platform that you use to listen. Stay happy.